Next up, we have, he's pretty famous here in our world at Trout CPA. We've got Michael Carr. He's the Director of Tax Resolution here at Trout. Michael is dedicated to helping our clients navigate tax notices and resolve complex issues with taxing authorities. With the years of experience in tax resolution, planning, and business consulting, Michael is eager to share his 5 ways of avoiding a payroll tax notice and offering practical strategies to stay compliant. Michael, we're grateful to have you, and we're happy to hear from you. The floor is yours.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I hope everyone can hear me okay. I'm going to go over 5 ways to avoid getting a payroll tax notice. For some of you, this may just seem like obvious, but know that for some people, they're still operating in ways that will generate a tax notice. These may seem simplistic, easy to implement, and that's because they are. There's some very simple ways that we can all avoid getting payroll tax notices, getting assessed penalties, avoiding civil penalties for not properly filing things. And I'm going to go over all those today. The first thing to realize and to absolutely accept is that tax notices do happen. You're working with a government agency that is underfunded, understaffed, and using very antiquated technology. They're still using old 1980s computers to run the bulk of their processes. They're still using 1980s software, old green bar printers, the old black and green computer screens on a CRT monitor. It's very bad at the IRS. So there's a lot of things that can go terribly wrong, even if you do everything correctly. On top of that, you're also dealing with another underfunded, understaffed government agency, the United States Postal Service. We're going to go over some ways that you can utilize the Postal Service to help you out to avoid tax notices, but even the best laid plans with the Postal Service can still go absolutely wrong. And there's nothing you can do about it. And then ultimately, mistakes happen. Now, we're all prone to accidentally entering a wrong number on a form, entering a number on the wrong line of a form, just aligning things incorrectly. It happens, and that's okay. When a notice happens, it's not the end of the world. You're not going to go to jail. The government's not going to show up on your doorstep and take you away in handcuffs. The IRS is just going to communicate with you and say, hey, we think something went wrong. So let's move into what you can do. The biggest thing, the biggest suggestion I can make, set yourself up for success, use e-file, okay? I know a lot of our clients still are mailing things into the IRS. I'm going to strongly recommend against that. When the IRS receives mail, sometimes it just doesn't. With an e-file, I'm going to say about 99% of the time when you e-file, the IRS is going to receive what you e-file. And I say 99% because I've had to answer a number of notices this year where we know documents were e-filed and the IRS lost the electronically filed document. I can't tell you how. I'm going to blame it again on underfunding and the antiquated software they're using. I just had one come in this morning where they lost an electronically filed set of W-2s. And so they're penalizing the client for not filing. We're going to have to pull up documents from the client to show that, yes, it was e-filed and it's all on the IRS's end. So, but still, even with that 1% error, I'm still strongly recommending e-file everything you can. There are a lot of third-party services that will allow you to e-file. Now, I'll put a link up on the slide here that you can follow when you come back later to see who all offers, and you'd be surprised. and they're very affordable options. So, I mean, if you use QuickBooks, you can e-file through QuickBooks. If you use Peachtree, any accounting software that knows what it's doing allows for the e-filing of your payroll products. And be aware, e-filing is not going to be a choice for much longer. E-filing is becoming a mandatory item with the IRS. It's not going to be a choice for much longer. The IRS just knows that they're more likely to receive an electronically filed payroll return than they are a paper filed, something that's sent in the mail. So what if you can e-file? There are a host of reasons why you can't. We won't get into those today, but let's say you can't. How do you set yourself up for success if you can't e-file? And the way you do it is by sending certified mail. No return receipt. You don't need that green card to come back to you. All you need to do is send it certified. Now, the reason you send it certified and you don't send it like first party mail or you send it UPS or FedEx is because the IRS by law has to accept that you sent a document on a certain date if you send it certified mail. They do not have the option to say, oh, well, you didn't really send it, even if you have a receipt or a third-party document that shows that you mailed the payroll return or the W-2s. They don't have to accept that documentation. They will have to accept a certified mail. And what happens is when that certified mail gets stamped at your office or at the post office when you drop it off, that is now the date the IRS has to accept that it's received. So strongly recommend that you use certified mail in everything. I've had to answer a few notices here this year where the client thought that they were going to save some money by, just sending it normally, no certified mail, and just send it on at the end of the month and not a big deal. And then they get a huge tax penalty because the IRS is dating the returns received 3 days after the due date. It's a $5 or $6 charge. It could save you thousands of dollars. Go for the certified mailer. Don't just rely on the Postal Service to do its job. If you can't send certified, I don't know what situations they would be, but let's go under the assumption you can't send certified. Send it early. Don't wait until the last minute to send anything to the IRS. Instead, you want to make sure that you're sending it with enough time for the IRS to receive it, and enough time can be up to 2 weeks depending on the time of year. You know how the mail gets around Thanksgiving and Christmas. Gets very delayed. Everything is shipping through the mail, Christmas cards and Christmas gifts. Everything slows down. So don't rely on the mail to get there in time if you're only giving it a day or two to get there. Recommend giving it at least a week to 15 days. Again, strongly recommend certified. Don't send uncertified mail, but if you have to, send it early. So one of the other areas that we're starting to run into problems is using EFTPS. And most of you should be familiar with EFTPS. It's one of 2 mandatory options for electronic payment of your payroll tax deposits. Make sure your banking and address information is up to date in EFTPS, and make sure you know your EFTPS PIN. Now, this is important, and I mentioned this a little later on. QuickBooks is very problematic with the EFTPS PIN. If you don't have it entered correctly in there, you won't get a notification when your EFTPS doesn't go through. You'll think everything's good until you get the notice of late payment or non-payment. And those can carry up to 5 to 25% penalties. And there is no way out of those. If you haven't paid, and you can't just say, oh, well, QuickBooks, it's all QuickBooks' fault. The IRS isn't going to buy that. I've tried that numerous times, and it doesn't work. Their opinion is, well, then you should go back to QuickBooks, and QuickBooks should reimburse you. And I can tell you that QuickBooks will not reimburse you. Their opinion is our software is easy enough to use. It gives you notification. If you don't know where to look for it, that's on you. The other issue we run into, beyond just knowing your PIN, making sure your address is up to date, making sure your banking is up to date, make sure you're paying the correct period. This is a very easy mistake to make if you're rushing through, trying to get a payment in right before you go home on a Friday or before a holiday. We see it a lot. You accidentally select the wrong year. You select the wrong quarter. You select any number of wrong periods. Don't rush. Take your time, be methodical, be slow, and make sure you're selecting the correct tax period. What'll happen is you'll pay it, you'll think everything's good, then you'll get 2 notices from the IRS. One asking you, hey, we have a credit on file, and what do you want us to do with it? And then a second notice on another tax period saying you're underpaid, we're penalizing you for not paying on time, for a late deposit, late payment, and here's some interest on top of it at 8%. So be methodical, take your time, make sure you're selecting the correct tax period. And then again, just be careful with QuickBooks. Make sure if you're changing your PIN in EFTPS, you change your PIN in QuickBooks. Software does not give you a meaningful notification when your EFTPS is rejected. Normally, it's 2 or 3 layers down, and you really, really have to look for it. So just be very careful. And then probably the most common error that we run into is accidental overpayment of your taxes due. This will happen when you have a payroll and you don't realize that there was some sort of credit, or there was maybe some third-party sick pay, and you just pay what you think you're supposed to pay. And you don't give it enough time to really think about, hey, well, am I taking into consideration everything I need to? If you do overpay, make sure that on the 941, you're checking the correct box at quarter end, whether you want the payment refunded or credited to the next tax period. I will tell you from dealing with the IRS, your best option is just to get it refunded. It may seem like a great idea to credit it to the next tax period because then your next tax payment is lower. About 50% of the time, the IRS gets it wrong. And next thing you know, you're getting that dreaded late payment penalty. So just refund it, paying what you're supposed to every week, bi-weekly, monthly, quarterly, and you should be fine. So those are my 5 tips. Just to recap, e-file. If you can e-file, certified mail. If you can't certify mail, send it early. Watch your EFTPS, both with what dates you're selecting, and make sure your PIN is correct. And then finally, don't overpay. Pay only what is due. So that's my presentation for today. Are there any questions? It can be about specifically anything I brought up, or if you have Any payroll tax notice questions that we can quickly answer, be glad to help you out.
Thank you, Michael. I don't see any questions in the Q&A. I think that, you know, as we always say, don't be afraid if you do get a notice. For those of you on this call, it's not if it's going to happen, it's when it's going to happen, they happen, right? It's not always, Michael, that you've done something wrong either, right?
Right.
So,
Absolutely.
But the best people to help you figure that out is Michael Carr here at Trout. So please make sure if you get a notice, you share it with your contact manager here at Trout, and we'll be sure to enlist Michael in to help us figure it out, because that's what he loves to do.
Honestly do.
And we couldn't be more grateful that that's his passion and he is excellent at it. Again, Michael, we thank you for your time.